We did a bit of research about this Bristol audience. It won't be statistically representative of Britain as a whole, but it came up with some interesting results. There are Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, people who believe in God but not a religion, quite a few people who are not at all sure, and others who definitely do not believe in God here today. But interestingly, not one of our believers was brought up outside of a faith. So it would seem that what you're led to believe as a child is absolutely critical in whether you will become a religious adult. So, should children be brought up in a faith? Anthony Lampert, children have a kind of a period of magical belief, don't they, wherein they will believe anything. Are there dangers in that?
Absolutely. Children are hardwired to follow their parents, and it's a safety mechanism. They have to follow their parents. The parents will teach them all sorts of safety mechanisms, and they're undiscriminating at the beginning. And it's an extraordinarily effective mechanism to indoctrinate children, to close off some of the questioning pathways, and it can be extraordinarily harmful as well. Religion hardwired into children can actually stifle their thought processes later on.
Can I object, really? I'd like to object both as a parent and as a rabbi.
Rabbi, he's only just started.
Yeah, but he's wrong. And he can't be allowed to get away with it, because surely, parents, it's appropriate to hand on the best of what you consider your social skills are. It could be music, it could be sports, and it could be religion, because religion ultimately is a force for good, both for the individual, giving them sort of a sense of personal worth and values, and also giving them a place in society. And your idea of religion is a sort of dinosaur religion, going back to tribal sacrifices. Religion's moved on, and religion at its best seeks to stimulate, to ask questions, and to look for the good of the child and society as a whole.
At its best, religion certainly can have all those human attributes of sharing knowledge, of encouraging debate, of encouraging free thought. And I applaud you if you manage within your religion to succeed, to find a way out of the religious strictures, to succeed in that venture. And I think, in fact, there are a lot of religious parents who can do that, who succeed in opening their children's minds. Unfortunately, what I've experienced, and I've experienced personally, and seeing the effects of religion in the world, is that many children don't find a way out and don't see a way, don't see any pathway to explore the world properly without suffering huge difficulties within their own family of upbringing or their culture of upbringing. They are constrained by that.
Yeah, so what you've got to do is distinguish between good religion and bad religion.
We're here. Join us on a Sunday morning.
Or the religion that is inclusive and welcoming and open to others, which it does much part of the
But you say religion has moved on tremendously over the years. Has it?
Yes, it has. It has.
Every phase has contained both of those tendencies at each, and this is equally true of non-religious belief systems. There are aspects of religions, some people practice their religion in a very authoritarian and enclosed way, and there are some people who practice their religion in a much more open and welcoming way. So it's a spectrum in every faith and in every non-religious faith system. So the issue is, how can you understand being a committed person of any sort, for myself being a Christian, a committed Christian, for Andrew being a committed humanist, how can I understand that living alongside people who have other commitments and engage in that debate? You will find both aspects in each faith and non-faith.
I'm interested in this idea as well of the neural pathways being very difficult to unblock later on in life.
I mean, there's evidence. I sit on a children's safeguarding board where I work as a GP, and there's some very strong evidence that children, and this is slightly sideways, but it's evidence of the neural pathways. Children who are exposed to emotional abuse in childhood, if they're removed quite quickly, they can recover and put with different families. If you leave them for 3 or 4 years from a very early age, there's a level to which they won't...
Can religion be a form of emotional abuse then?
This is outrageous.
Wait. You might think it's outrageous and you'll get the chance to say that in a minute. Let's explore it just a little bit. Let's tee it up and explore it. It's interesting. Do you think religion can be a form of emotional abuse?
All forms of overriding abuse of power can be forms of abuse, emotional and physical. It doesn't just apply to religion. It just so happens that religion is one of the main forms and one of the most accepted forms within our society. And when many people say, oh, religion has moved on, certainly it's moved on. But there are all sorts of issues that people regard as mainstream that I would regard as quite horrendous. Cutting parts off children's genitals, for example. That's mainstream in this country. That's acceptable. But it's not one-sided for the child. For the child, it's their genitals.
Is that a breach of human rights?
Absolutely.
Nicky,
Rania.
I wanted to address
you said it was outrageous, but what's outrageous?
The issue of the emotional abuse and the indoctrination. I'm a Muslim girl who was brought up in a Catholic convent. What I found is religion encapsulates a human experience over millennia. It's a bit like a national curriculum. The child is introduced to geography, to history, to art, to music, and to actually asking big questions about the world. And as a person, that gave me the idea to articulate, to explore, to express myself, and quite happily within two faiths. So the idea that actually religion, I even disagree with it having moved on. Actually, what religion gives you is millennia of human experience. The religion actually gives us the option or the chance to express our humanity. And yes, there might be some parents who are abusive or some adults who are abusive, but it is when the child is at its inquisitive best, is when religion allows that child to ask questions beyond itself.
But what if the child says at its inquisitive best, I don't think this is the inerrant literal word of God. I think it was just something that was put together later on.
That's fine, because
is that fine?
Absolutely fine, because I speak as a parent of children who, some of them have actually said, we might disagree with you and we want to disagree with you. But I think that's the idea, that it's not just exposing them to indoctrination or doctrine,
or dogma.
Or dogma. Religion ask of its adherents to question. All religions are of its adherents to question, and ask them to question big issues to do with metaphysics, their place in life. But that humanity has got it through millennia of religion. It's about time the humanists actually admitted to the debt they have to religion.
All right, well, hang on a second. We're just over here. We'll be with you. But Andrew Coxon, you've been referred to
twice
by name.
Okay, I think we're talking about two different things. I think that Rabbi Jonathan Romain is quite right to point out that no parent can escape from, and in fact they shouldn't try to escape from, their obligation to their child. If they are part of a certain culture, they're bringing their child up in that way, they will use the best resources they have available to do so. And if I might
say, that's a human right.
Yeah, it is.
Whether that child is a Muslim child or a Christian child or a Mormon child.
Children to be described in that way, I think, is not necessarily the most useful terminology.
Why not?
Because because in the sense...
I knew you would say that.
Yeah, I know, that's why you said it. Well, there's a sense, let's be clear, in which, of course, very small children... I remember coming home from a school mock election and asking my mum, am I Labour or Conservative? And so there's some extent to which, of course, children are always going to associate... She said neither. But there's always an extent to which children are going to associate, with their parents to some extent. But as children grow and mature, I think it's the obligation of parents to be able to lay in front of that child the options that exist in the world, and to equip them with the skills to make their own determinations. And I think you can provide a child with that sort of upbringing, whether you're religious or non-religious, in fact. But I think that's separate from what Jonathan is defending. Now, Reform Judaism, for example, to me would be a very good example of a sort of religion which resides very much in community and cultural feeling. Yeah. Whereas what Anthony is talking about is the sort of religious upbringing that would enforce certain codes, certain ways of thinking, certain doctrinaire and dogmatic ways of thinking.
For example?
For example, if you had children who were raised in very exclusive brethren families, for example, then there's good evidence from studies of children who are raised in very exclusive, closed-off sects.
Protestant sects, as you would call it,
who have real difficulty engaging in the future with their life. There's good evidence that people
but currently our schools are actually imposing doctrinarian ideas around environmentalism, around healthy eating. Children are feeling guilty if they have a burger and chips. So the idea that religion is the one that is indoctrinating kids.
Children are feeling guilty if they have a burger and chips.
Gentlemen here straight away, you put your hand up. And I'm going to do the idea, I want to pursue the idea you said about the genital mutilation a few minutes ago as well.
Can I just say, I don't think that's quite what he was saying. What he was saying was that parents have this sort of inherent inbuilt effect on their children, whether they're religious or non-religious. So that's going to be there anyway. What we need to do is accept that, I think, and then make sure that the religious education they get after that is good.
Yeah. And what about this idea that it's an absolute violation of someone's human rights to cut a part off them when they're very, very little, before they're in a position to consent or not? Because I saw Jonathan went bright red when you said that.
I mean, and I absolutely share with Jonathan that I think it's very important that parents share their values and beliefs with children. That stops where the parent's body stops. The child's body is somebody else's body. Many children will leave the religion or culture of their parents when they get older. It's vital that you leave them sufficient space and actually leave them their body intact in order that may I just finish?
Of a child's right for a parent to take them to the barber, the hairdresser.
I'm not. Do you think it's the same? Going to the barber?
I'm asking the question.
Perhaps I could reflect. Perhaps I could reflect.
Okay, Anthony, Stephen, and Anthony, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm afraid that's just a nonsensical parallel. Well, I refer you to the FGM legislation. Do you say that it's okay to chop parts off girls' bodies? I think it's ridiculous to chop parts of anybody's body without their consent. Of a child's body.
All right, Jonathan, Rabbi Jonathan, you want us to get real?
Yes.
Chance would be a fine thing.
I'll try. The one thing everybody knows about Jewish parents is they are neurotic about their children's health. If for one moment over the last 5,000 years we thought that it was endangering a child physically, psychologically, emotionally, it would have been dropped. Absolutely, along with animal sacrifices. We don't do it because we want to harm the children.
Points. May I quote Maimonides from the 12th century, who knew that it reduced sexual satisfaction,
What? How many children do Jewish parents have?
And number two, there is a code in Jewish law that says if you've already had 2 sons who've died from ritual circumcision, believe me, children do die from this operation, this unnecessary, non-therapeutic operation. You no longer need to circumcise.
This is the 12th century when every other child died in childbirth anyway.
And the fact is, there is current research. There is 21st century. In the 21st century, 2007, in the British Journal of Urology International by Sorrells, there's a good paper on sensitivity of the penis, not being rebutted. You speak to people. I'm afraid people who are brought up in these communities don't know because they've never known. If you speak to people within these communities,
Stephen Law. Let me bring Stephen Law. You've written a book about this. You've written about the What's your book called, Stephen?
The War for Children's Minds.
Ah, you're right on this then. The war is this a war for children's minds? Is it dangerous to implant this stuff in a child's mind when that child is at their most credulous?
What we've heard are very liberal voices so far this evening, and not everyone is quite so liberal. It seems to me that it's important that we encourage children to think and question, and everyone's signing up to that here. Yeah. But I think it's particularly important that we don't raise moral sheep, if you like, individuals that might do the right thing whilst they're being led in that direction, but when someone else comes along and wants to lead them in a different, darker direction, they'll follow that leader too, because they don't have the inner resources they need to think for themselves and make their own moral decisions. So it's important we raise citizens to be independent, critical thinkers, and most people here seem to want to sign up to that. And if it is that important, then let's make sure that every school, state-funded or not, is ensuring that children are thinking critically and independently about these kinds of issues.
And are not being taught lies.
I think it's the most important thing is that they develop some kind of filter, some kind of way of telling truth from falsehood, so that they can go out into the world and have some kind of immunity to the people out there who are going to try and take advantage of them and possibly lead them down some very dark paths. We need to make sure that they have those kind of inner resources. And it turns out that the best way to produce those inner resources is not actually to expose them to religion, although I'm not particularly against that. The really important thing is that you raise them to think and question, you raise them in a non-authoritarian way. That is the bottom line. And we need to make sure that our schools, all of them, are encouraging that kind of attitude in children. And I know for a fact that many are not.
But you think, of course, Mark, don't you, that they should only be brought up as Christians? For you, it's a matter of salvation, isn't it, for a child?
It certainly is the fact that the most important decision any of us make is our decision about Jesus Christ and the gospel, whether we will trust in him for the forgiveness of our sins, that we might go to heaven. That's the issue for all mankind. So we put that in the context of educating a child, and we see, first of all, that a Christian is a Christian home will be a home where they love their children. And this is a point that was made by the doctor opposite. He said that he's aware of emotional abuse. You won't have emotional abuse in a loving household, and that's what Christianity gives you. Non-religious households are less likely to give you that same degree of love. Now, love... Wow.
There's no evidence.
Love. Now, love requires that you give somebody freedom of choice. And freedom of choice means that you don't force something down someone's, but you give them the information, as we've all discussed.
But if you have children, you may have children one day. You're not, I don't know if you're married.
I'm not married. But
not married, but if you have children, of course you would be married.
Yes, I would.
But if you were to have children one day, for you, their Christian education is a matter ultimately because you love them so much of their avoiding hell.
No, well, yes, of course it is. But the way you do that is to give them the information to make the choice, but tell them that if they're going to make that choice, it's going to cost them a lifestyle choice, and they must make that decision for themselves. I would certainly not want to make it for them.
But I think all religions, that's what they aim for. They aim for their adherents to actually make a choice. The idea is you are accountable for your actions. And I think religion does teach criticality, does teach critical thinking. As a Muslim who grew up in a Catholic convent, we were encouraged to think critically, both in both faiths, and it's about making that choice. So religion does give you the option to start thinking and making choices.
You were going to come back on Mark just a second ago. We're going to go on to faith schools in just a second.
I think that defence of Christian upbringing in the home sort of exposes one of the deep problems with raising children to see religion and morality as too closely linked together. If you raise a child and say, you know, here is the religion and morality is part of this, and it's very dependent on morality, and later in life that child rejects, and statistically they're extremely likely to do, rejects the religious belief, I think there's a danger that they reject the morality as well, and they're left without the resources to live a moral and meaningful that's why when people say, what's your problem with religious schools, because lots of people who leave them aren't religious, that's why that's not a good response to objection to religious schools, because the fracture from leaving beliefs behind can be as damaging as growing up and not questioning them.
Because all that children are exposed to in a whole range of ways, which by television, school, the lot, is that there are a range of ways of living your life. Nobody can bring their child up as an island, except the ones that describe that are the extreme cases where there's a real isolationist view. Homeschoolers who don't let their children out into the real world, if you like. Children are exposed to that all the time, and part of a parent's job, as has already been said, is to help them to negotiate those choices. And when they're very little, you're not going to give them that much choice, because actually they're not able to make the choices. But, as we've all said, and you're quite right, we all sign up to the fact that it's about understanding where the different viewpoints come from, what you want to show of your own commitments, and you're absolutely right, you want to pass on to your child the things that matter to you.
Idris is desperate to come in. Yeah. Am I right in saying that you took your children out at one stage of the state system?
Yes, I mean, they didn't go into it.
Right. When you were worried about their being indoctrinated?
Yes, I just felt I could do a better job with educating them, because I'd seen the results of education, you know, both from my own education, but, you know, I had been interested in education as a social...
What were you worried about that they might be inculcated
one thing which I was worried about, which I think is something which has not really been mentioned, which is about giving children a language of the inward, of opening neural pathways that if you don't open them at the time when they're sensitive to those things, they don't have that inner language to make spiritual judgments. And I would say that I, myself, in my own life, are an example of that. I came from parents who never expressed any spiritual, religious, they never talked about God, but in their wisdom, they sent me to a Bible class, you know, a Sunday school at the age of 5, and then they sent me off at the age of 8 to a kind of a prep school that had, you know, very definite Christian kind of ethos, and we used to sing hymns. And I don't think that I would have had that language of exploring my own inward, which actually, you know, ended up with me becoming a Muslim, if I had just been left in the hands of my parents, because they didn't have any language for that.
Your pathways were blocked.
My pathways would have been blocked if I hadn't been for the intervention of the Christian education.
Anthony.
Yeah, you're talking about the wonderful human love and support and guidance of parents. And I'm afraid I do object quite strongly to hear a statement that can only come through any one particular belief system. I think it can come through a variety of different ways, including religion. As I say, I think people sometimes have to push quite hard to find it within certain strictures of religion. Some religions are more broad-based than others. I think that's wonderful that your parents loved you and showed you love and support. Open up the pathways. What I worry about is
I think they did it inadvertently. I don't think they had any. They just did it because everybody else sent their children off to Sunday school.
It's an unintended consequence.
So they did it kind of.
I want to move on to faith schools in a second, but finish what you were saying, Anthony.
I'm not sure I have anything more to say on that.
If you finished,
I think I have.
But if you finished what he was saying, deserves a round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Faith schools. Faith schools. Rabbi Jonathan Romain. This may come as a surprise to some people. Why are you so dead set, absolutely against faith schools?
Well, as you just heard, I am very much in favour of faith, but I'm actually concerned about faith schools because of their effect. Now, I know that people who run them may have the very best intentions, but the actual result is you're dividing the children. And we wouldn't dream of doing that by colour, school for black children, school for white children. Why are we doing it by faith? And of course... And the result is we have little sort of educational ghettos of Muslims here, my lot, the Jews there, Catholics, Sikhs, Hindus, and it's actually not healthy. It's not healthy for the children because it limits their horizons. And even if the best of those schools teach about other children and other faiths, it's not the same as interacting, sitting next to them. And it's also not good for the rest of their families because it means the parents don't meet outside the school gate, they don't meet at sort of sports days, open days, and therefore you're cutting huge swathes through society. And I say all this for religious reasons because I'd actually take seriously the Bible and where it says love your neighbour as yourself. And the only way you can actually love your neighbour is actually if you meet your neighbour and know your neighbour and interact.
David Conway? I think David on this, yeah?
Well, I beg to differ, and I differ for the following reason. The reason you asked the question, why should anyone bring their children up in a faith school? The answer to that is because of the benefits and value of a religious education. You yourself have said that you support faith. A corollary of that, I take it, would be that you should support religious education. Now,
yes, but not at school.
Excuse me, sorry.
After school,
weekends.
Why divide the children?
Well, if you allow me to get a word in, I will tell you why. Because of the differences that there are between faiths and the impossibility of bringing children up in any one faith simultaneously in a class, in a school, at the same time as you are seeking to inculcate and nurture every other faith that there is in this country.
I disagree with that.
Excuse me.
We do it.
No, so they're irreconcilable.
Yes, absolutely. It's a tower of what you will get is a Tower of Babel.
So,
and not only that,
there are walls between.
Wait a minute. If we can go back.
But is that not an argument that religion should be nothing to do with schools?
No, absolutely not. If you think, sorry, can I just go? Can we start? Sorry, can we just go back a few steps?
It's fine, David.
Yeah. Is religion a good thing for children? Right. It's a good thing for children. Why is it a good thing for children? It's a good thing for children because it's a good thing for adults. Why is it a good thing for adults? Because innumerable studies have shown from America, Europe and Britain that people lead healthier, happier lives and less... with respect, these are the latest findings from positive psychology. Richard Layard in his book Happiness...
Could I quote Christian Medical Fellowship?
No, you can't, because I'm speaking now. And that's point number one.
Yeah.
Secondly, it has also been found that children who have a religious faith, have some religious faith, it is far better for them educationally. Not only do they tend to achieve much better academic results in consequence, and irrespective of whichever type of faith...
Why is that? Because of their religious faith? Why? Or because of their home life? Or what?
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll answer that question. The reason why, one is, it insulates them from a lot of risky behaviours that otherwise children... This is a well-known... Look, I'm sorry, you keep saying no. Why don't some of you read some of the social scientific literature?
There is a huge amount of social scientific literature on this, and what it shows by and large is that people who have strong beliefs of any sort have, you know, happier lives and feel more secure in themselves. Unsurprising. That doesn't mean that we should start encouraging really, really right-wing racist political beliefs because the people who have them are really happy. And in the same way, not to compare like with like, well, they are. If you look at the American studies, for example, you keep using the category of religion as if that's what's being talked about, but actually, strong beliefs of any sort, strong community belonging of any sort, whether non-religious or religious, is shown to have the same
you feel constantly vindicated.
Effect. Yeah, you're with people who, you know, agree with you, and it's very good feeling of solidarity. Yeah. But, you know, another good part of life is to be challenged and to think outside your normal parameters, and that is the best part. Absolutely, it's what this programme is about. Imagine how boring it would be if everyone here in this audience all agreed and was of the same mind.
But it's up to the community. Then, if it wants to create a school, to create a school. And actually, in this country, I would actually support faith schools, which are open to everybody in the community to apply and come to them, because what they actually give, they will follow the national curriculum. They'll be inspected by Ofsted. I've been a governor for a faith school for many years. We've gone through all this, but they also develop what Idris was talking about, which is those spiritual pathways, those questions. They ask the metaphysical questions that all kids can take part in. So they do not exclude. They do not have to be exclusive. As I said, what Jay said, there are many examples of faith schools in Britain currently where kids from all backgrounds, all faith and no faiths go to, and they actually thrive there.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, but how competent are children to ask questions about metaphysics is baffling to me when many of them are not in the ability to ask such complex questions.
Well, questions about why I'm here, what made the world. These are the questions. I mean, if you talk to Stephen, he will tell you.
You're right. Children will always ask questions that are all just out of their reach.
Well, let's hear his story. He's got a fascinating story because you were brought up in a Muslim school in Pakistan.
Yes.
And then...
well, I wouldn't say a Muslim school, but Islamic education was compulsory.
Then you came to this country, went to a science class, and gradually your eyes were opened to the true wonders of science, which you've not been taught.
Well, I do realize that, of course, if you want to have a faith school, then faith itself or religion itself makes claims about ethics and various other things. And if you do in fact allow that, then there will be disagreements because it's already making such claims. Education as secular education itself, you know, they are quite open to every other view. Whereas if you allow just a faith school of just one religion, they will teach the worldview of that religion. But of course, whilst everyone says that faith teaches people to be curious, children to be curious, well, they already have a natural curiosity, and I do feel that we should pursue curiosity for curiosity's sake rather than use another thing that...
Yeah, and the problem is, of course, there was the problem, wasn't there, of the King Fahd school in Acton. It was a private school. It was funded by Saudi money, and they were teaching creationism over the true wonders of science. They were teaching anti-Semitism. They were teaching that Jews should be called pigs, and they were teaching that women should be in their place.
But that's nothing to do with the religion. That's to do with actually that's completely erroneous, because the Quran does not teach creationism.
Well, you're denying,
Can I finish? If you read the Quran,
at its best, religion certainly can have all those human attributes of sharing knowledge, of encouraging debate, of encouraging free thought. And I applaud you if you manage within your religion to succeed to find a way out of the religious strictures to succeed in that venture. And I think, in fact, there are a lot of religious parents who can do that, who succeed in opening their children's minds. Unfortunately, what I've experienced, and I've experienced personally, and seeing the effects of religion in the world, is that many children don't find a way out and don't see a way, don't see any pathway to explore the world properly without suffering huge difficulties within their own family of upbringing or their culture of upbringing. They are constrained by that.
I'd like to object both as a parent and as a rabbi.
He's only just started.
Yeah, but he's wrong. And he can't be allowed to get away with it, because surely parents, it's appropriate to hand on the best of what you consider your social skills are. It could be music, it could be sports, and it could be religion, because religion ultimately is a force for good, both for the individual, giving them sort of a sense of personal worth and values, and also giving them a place in society. And your idea of religion is a sort of dinosaur religion, that we're going back to tribal sacrifices. Religion's moved on, and religion at its best seeks to stimulate, to ask questions, and to look for the good of the child and society as a whole. So what you've got to do is distinguish between good religion and bad religion.
Oh, well, we're here. Join us on a Sunday morning.
Or the religion that is inclusive and welcoming and open to others, which is as much part
But
of
you
the
say religion has moved on tremendously over the years. Has it?
Yes, it has. It has.
Every religion at every phase has contained both of those tendencies at each, and this is equally true of non-religious belief systems. There are aspects of religions, some people practice their religion in a very authoritarian and enclosed way, and there are some people who practice their religion in a much more open and welcoming way. So it's a spectrum in every faith and in every...
We did a bit of research about this Bristol audience. It won't be statistically representative of Britain as a whole, but it came up with some interesting results. There are Christians, Muslims, Jews, Hindus, Sikhs, people who believe in God but not a religion, quite a few people who are not at all sure, and others who definitely do not believe in God here today. But interestingly, not one of our believers was brought up outside of a faith. So it would seem that what you're led to believe as a child is absolutely critical in whether you will become a religious adult. So, should children be brought up in a faith? Anthony Lampert, children have a kind of a period of magical belief, don't they, wherein they will believe anything. Are there dangers in that?
Absolutely. Children are hardwired to follow their parents, and it's a safety mechanism. They have to follow their parents. The parents will teach them all sorts of safety mechanisms, and they're undiscriminating at the beginning. And it's an extraordinarily effective mechanism to indoctrinate children, to close off some of the questioning pathways, and it can be extraordinarily harmful as well. Religion hardwired into children can actually stifle their thought processes later on.
Can I object, really?